Click the bell icon to get latest videos from Ekeeda.
Hello friends, today we are going to discuss about the Windows thread of the thread library in an operating system. In this Windows API, how we can create the threads and how it can be manipulated using the parameters and where to use these Windows threads, we will discuss today. Windows API threads are supported directly by the Windows and it is similar to the pthread of a POSIX standard very closely. In Windows API, we can create a thread by the thread create function, and this thread create function is then passed with many parameters like the set of attributes of the process ID or the thread. These attributes include the security information, the size of the stack, and a flag that is indicating that the thread is to be starts its execution in a suspended state or not. In a default value, the thread is not put it to be start in a suspended status. Rather, it can be start in a CPU scheduler. Now these parameters must be passed to a thread create function to actually create the separate thread to calculate or do any other options. Now, as the parent has created the child thread, it must wait for the child thread to terminate its completion execution. It can do that as a pthread join in the pthread POSIX standard. In Windows, we will do this equivalent job using the wait for single object function. This wait for single object function then blocks the parent thread until and unless the child thread exits the process. Now, if a system requires multiple process threads to be acquired to perform the simple task, then the wait for single object function should be replaced with a wait for multiple object function. This wait for multiple object function then can be used. The parent can be wait for the multiple child threads to complete their execution. This function needs four parameters. The first one is the number of the objects that are to be identified. Next is a pointer to the array of the object. Next is a flag which indicates that all objects have been signaled or not. And the last one is a timeout duration. Suppose there is a pointer to an array of object t handle of size n and a flag is indicating that all the subjects should be signaled first and their given timeout duration is infinite, then they should be declared in this way. So in this way, we can create a parent thread and that can wait for multiple child threads that are using a t handle of object size n and the flag is indicating true and the timeout duration is infinite. Now we will solve a C program to actually create a separate thread for calculation the summation of non-negative integer using a Windows API program. Now to use the Windows API program, we must include the Windows pthread h header file in the first. This dword sum, here dword is a 32-bit unsigned integer type and we are using and declaring the name sum for declaring a global shared data for the program, which will be used by both the main function and the summation function, which is the exact function where the separate and child thread will begin its execution. Now the name of the function where the child thread will begin its execution is summation here. The return type is a dword object of Win API, and here a pointer to a void is passed as a parameter of this function. In Windows, that void pointer is known as LP void. What is the function of the summation program? The summation function is actually performing the sum from the 0 to the u, that is a dword integer, 32-bit unsigned integer, and we using a for loop we are summing the functions, and result of this summation is stored into the global data known as sum. We are returning from this function as the return successful with a 0, and now returning to the main function we will define it and see that what parameters and how to create the thread using a thread function. First, in the main function, we are declaring three variables. The first variable is the thread ID, and which is a unique identifier to identify the thread that is being created by the main thread. The next one is the handle to control the handle of the next thread creation. And the third one is the integer parameter known as param, which will actually store the argv command line argument that the user is inputting the non-negative integer value. So now we are checking that the number is input in the command line is an integer number or not. Now after checking that the input number is the non-negative or not, we are actually creating the separate thread and using the create thread function. Here in the create thread function, we are passing the parameters. The first one is the default security information. The next one is the default stack size. The next one is the function name where the thread child will begin its execution. The next one is the parameter name on which the number integer is stored. The next one is the flag and at least the thread ID which is to be passed in this parameter. This function will create a separate thread as the child thread including the main thread. Now, if the thread has created successfully, then it will not return a null. And if it is not equals to null, then the parent thread must wait for the child thread's termination. And we can do it with the wait for signal eject function. Using this wait for single eject function, the parent will wait for it. And after that, the parent will give the output of the result of the summation function. Now, after closing the handle for creation of the thread using the close handle function, the parent, the main thread, and the main function is actually outputting the value of the sum which the summation program has returned. In this way, Windows API can create thread and manage threads using these all functions. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and subscribe to Ekeeda.